All right. Next up is me. I've been watching. So let's back it up before I even start. Quentin
Yeah,
Tarantino's new film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, comes out
I'm excited.
in like
I
a
like Hollywood.
week. And
Yeah, no.
it comes out like in a week or two. It's in July, right? Hold on. This warrants a fact check. Um,
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
yeah.
July 25th. Two
Hell
weeks.
yeah. Okay, so in like 2 weeks. So it's been a while since I've dove. Bradley, correct me. You know the good grammars.
Uh,
Uh,
don't do this to me.
Doved. Uh, since I've watched Quentin Tarantino movies, and he's my favorite director, so I decided to take it all the way back. And this was like last weekend I started. I watched his first two films, which were Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. I hope I'm not wrong about that, because he also has some weird other projects where he wasn't the director and main writer, but whatever. Um, so let's talk about them, and maybe on the next two or three, I'll get to the other movies. So Reservoir Dogs is his first film, and have either of you seen this movie?
No.
I've not.
When did it come out? Let's see. Reservoir
Or,
Dog.
or
I think it was 92. Yeah, okay. So it came out before any of us were born. Um and this used to be my least favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. Um I watched it before I really got it, before I got like what's impressive about his movies or what's interesting about them. So and I haven't watched it since. I've only watched this one once up until last weekend. Um, so with that in mind, I went in this time with a new sense of what I appreciate about his movies, and ended up enjoying it a lot more. So this movie is about it's basically about a heist gone wrong, and it's just told in an interesting way. Where the movie starts off, and it starts off with something that is really characteristic of what Quentin Tarantino is really good at, which is conversations. It's just this group of thugs. I don't know, people who do jobs, but I don't think they're mafia. They just kind of get hired for crimes, and
The
they
legal term is hooligans.
hooligans. They're hooligans. They're a little more. I wouldn't say they're classier, but they're not quite hooligan like street thugs.
Oh,
They're professional. They're professionals about it.
professional hoodlums.
There you go. That is the term that you'll find in any dictionary for it. So they're just talking about how like they don't. One of them doesn't do tips, and they're talking. Quentin Tarantino's in the scene, and he's talking about like a virgin and how it's about an orgasm, and they're just going and going, and this dude's not tipping, and it's just like this is going nowhere. But the dialogue is so good, and we're learning so much about each character. Where they're all hired for this job by like the boss who gets crews together for heists, and to make sure that they're anonymous, they each have a code name. So you have Mr. Pink, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Brown, uh,
And Miss Wednesday.
and Miss Wednesday,
All
Miss All
Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some colors I'm missing there. There's Mr. White, but not Breaking Bad. Mr. White,
Mr. White.
Mr. White.
Hoodlums.
So you introduce them that way, and then you get like a hard cut, and then two of them are walking to this warehouse. The heist has already happened. You never get to see the heist. The movie is kind of told out of order. You don't really get to see the heist, but you get to see the post effect of it, where it's Mr. White walking in with Mr. Orange, and this is an older gentleman who's been in the job for a long time, and then Mr. Orange is the one who got shot, and it turns out he's a fucking narc. He was there all along to get the crew busted. He infiltrated the squad, and he's the one who like set people off to. He set the police off to the heist, which is why they were immediately there. So everyone, like, it's Mr. White, Mr. Blanc, Mr. Orange is dying. Mr. Pink shows up. He's Steve Buscemi. He's fucking great. He's probably the best character in this movie. Uh, he's super paranoid about everyone because like the heist immediately went wrong, so he knows someone tipped him off, and he's just throwing blame everywhere. And then it's just this big movie about people coming in and out of the warehouse, Mr. Orange dying. They can't take him to the police or the cops or the hospital because he will go to prison. They don't know that he's the narc. And then you don't really find out until the very end, like, that he actually is. You keep thinking the whole time, who was the narc? And in this really good scene where he's practicing on how to infiltrate the squad, he's, like, coming up with a badass story to tell them so that when he's in there, he can impress them with the crimes that he's committed. It's just really entertaining. The relationship between Mr. Orange and Mr. White that they form is really sad and tragic because it's kind of like a father-son relationship that they have, and Orange is like dying in his arm, and at the I won't spoil it. I won't spoil this movie from '92 because you should watch every Quentin Tarantino movie, even though I haven't. But that's what we're doing. I'm covering some gaps. On that note, I haven't watched Jackie Brown, and that's next online. I think that was his movie after Pulp Fiction. But yeah, I'm
a big Tarantino boy.
I'm a big Tarantino boy who hasn't watched one of the movies, so I'm a fraud. So with that in mind, like, I won't spoil it, but the ending is really tragic and just really good movie. Like, to think that this was his first, there's so much personality to how he directs, how he writes each scene, how it's told out of order. It just, if you have patience, it really pays off in the end. There's a character called Mr. Blonde. Yeah, Mr. Blonde, and he has a whole other thing going on, and he's like a really fucked up, scary kind of character, and whole side plot happens with him. Great shit. He shows up in Kill Bill later. And yeah, that's Reservoir Dogs. Solid 4 out of 5. I rated it a lot higher now than I would have in the past, which led me the same night. I was like, okay, let's go on to the next one. I started Pulp Fiction. Have y'all watched Pulp Fiction?
I have never watched. I've seen the clips. I've never seen the movie in full.
I have a complicated watching with Pulp Fiction in that I was going through a freshman Joe crisis, so I only saw bits and pieces of it while I walked the entire length of Destin, Florida, then came back and watched the end of the movie.
Wow. Okay. So you didn't. No. So. So Pulp Fiction is widely considered by a lot of people to be Quentin Tarantino's masterpiece. This was his second movie, I think 1994. The year I was born. Fun fact for all the listeners. Yeah, 94. So a lot of people love this movie. I don't like it as much as other people, and this, if any Quentin Tarantino or movie fans are listening to this, they would scoff at that because it's so clearly his best film. But I do have some problems with it, and I'll address them now. I do have some notes as well. So this movie is told heavily out of order. It's got basically 2 or 3 storylines. It's really 2, and then a little bit of a third, where it features Vincent and Julius, which is Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta. They are hitmen. They're not hitmen. They're also professional hooligans, actually. A lot of
They are hitmen.
They're sent on a hit, but they're professional hooligans as a profession. Know what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, they're more like goons.
They're goons. Yeah, they're more goony than even the Reservoir Dogs crew.
I should mention that the only part of Pulp Fiction I didn't watch was the Bruce Willis part.
Right, and that's the third storyline, which features a boxer named God, what the fuck was his name? Oh no, hold on. I can't go on. I think it was Butch. Yeah, Butch. So that was Bruce Willis. Pretty early into his career. I think this might have been before Sixth Sense. Let's see. All the fact checking today. Yeah, it was before Sixth Sense. So this was like before. I feel like Sixth Sense is Bruce Willis's like big movie, and Die Hard. Die Hard might have been around this time. Anyways, that storyline is there. He's a boxer who is trying to get out of the game. He's told to throw a fight and retire because he's getting old. He's getting washed up. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. And he doesn't do it. He bets on himself to get all the money. And then he kills the guy in the ring as he's fighting. And he's like, okay, I have to get out of town with my girlfriend, who is a very charming, weird lady. And that's that side of the storyline. It intersects with the Julius Vincent storyline because they work with a guy called Marcellus Wallace. And he's the one who wants Butch dead because he's the one that wanted him to throw the fight. A lot of things intertwining. And the third, not even real storyline is of this couple who robs banks and such and liquor stores, and they just decide to have an idea to rob a diner because a diner is somewhere that you can rob and no one would do anything about it, and there's no security or anything. So they're like, this is a genius idea. And that's what the movie opens up with. Tim Roth, Mr. Orange from the previous movie, is also in this movie. And he's also in like 2 other Tarantino movies. Like, Tarantino likes to work with a lot of the same artists, especially Samuel L. Jackson. I think he's in the most. He's also in this movie, who is Julius. And yeah, all these 3 stories, they eventually intersect in interesting ways. And my problem with the movie is that it's so long, and a lot of it doesn't really go anywhere. And the thing is, each scene in this movie is really good and really interesting, but I feel like you could cut out the Butch storyline like completely, basically. Like, I feel like you could straight up cut out the Bruce Willis storyline, even if it has some really good scenes, and focus the storyline on Julius and Vincent and this side plot to their storyline, which is Vincent taking Marcellus Wallace's wife, who is Uma Thurman, out on a date. And he's just doing it because Marcellus is out of town, and they're like, okay, you're taking this girl on a date. You cannot cross any boundaries. The last guy who crossed any boundaries with her massaged her feet, and then Marcellus threw him out a window, which turned out to not even be a true story, but that's like the intimidation factor of it. Like, this girl is a stone cold fox, and you need to be careful around her. And there's a lot of tension in the scenes, but that's also one of the best scenes where they go to this nice diner and they dance like weirdos, and then she overdoses, and it's a really nice time for everyone. But I think that's really what it comes down to. It's a movie with a lot of good scenes, a lot of good direction, also, really good dialogue.
Told completely out of order.
Yeah, it's like the first scene. Did I write it down?
The first scene's the diner.
The first scene is like the second to last scene.
I thought the first scene was the diner, and then it jumps to the goons.
The first scene is it's the couple in the diner.
Yeah.
I guess it's not even the second to last scene. It's like the middle scene. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and then it cuts to
the goons, which is earlier that morning, which is before that first scene or around the same time. No,
and they almost get shot by Jerry Seinfeld, but he misses.
Is that Jerry Seinfeld? It looked like him.
Yeah, it's Jerry Seinfeld.
Shut up! He looks so young. Holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he was. They go to Quentin Tarantino's house, which is a scene that didn't have to be there at all, but it was fun.
Isn't that the one where they have to clean up the car?
They have to clean up the car, and Tarantino's there so he can say the N-word like 4 times because he's just got to get it out of his system.
Yeah.
He can't help it.
I shot Marv in the face.
And then Mr. White shows up as the wolf who cleans everything up, and like, it's a really fun scene, but it's like, it didn't have to be there.
I think the interesting part, I think the thing about Pulp Fiction, what makes Pulp Fiction interesting, is that you kind of have these 2 different sides, where you have Vincent and what's Samuel Jackson's character? Julius, who are these goons that are in with a mafia or some sort of gangster world, but really their whole day is just dealing with like an average kind of scenario from like a more higher up point of view, where like we have to fucking get our car clean or else the person that hired us is going to get pissed off or whatever.
It's more than that. They have to get the car clean before they have to take it to a place because they shot someone in the face and there's blood everywhere. You have to take it to a place where he knows a guy, but the guy's wife, Quentin Tarantino's wife, is going to be home in like an hour, so they have to get this done really fast, and like just this goofy tension comes from that. It's really unique.
But it's a very like it's a scenario you could really relate to, like, oh my god, I've ruined the car and I don't want the wife to know kind of deal or something like that.
Yeah, in that sense, the stakes aren't as high, but you know, the idea is there.
And then you have the other side where it's Bruce Willis's character who is literally running from the mob, which is like probably the most trouble like any average Joe person could ever be in.
Yeah.
And so it's a much more high stakes kind of thriller thing, but he's lower on the totem pole of society essentially.
Yeah, he's just Is he? I mean, I guess it's weird to compare like hoodlums to a boxer who is trying to flee.
They're not hoodlums; they're goons.
Goons, yeah, goons. But that's an interesting point where like Bruce Willis's storyline is the more intense one, and he gets captured and in a completely tangential scene, and he learns to forgive Marcellus Wallace by the end of it because shit goes down. Have you seen that scene, Joe?
No, I left during that.
That's dark shit happens.
I hear.
Have you heard about the Gimp?
Yeah, that's kind of why I left.
That is some of the most disturbing shit, but yeah, worth leaving if that's gonna make your stomach do some churns. But even without that intensity to the storyline, I was so much more interested in Julius and Vincent, where Julius is definitely the main character, I'd say, even though there's so many characters. Where what's that?
He's like in it the least too.
He is. Is he?
Yeah, because
so much of the story is Butch and Vincent. You're right.
Yeah.
Every scene he's in, he's with Vincent. Even he doesn't have any solo scenes. Mm-hmm. I feel like I only think he's the main character then because you get the most out of him because he goes through the biggest character arc. Mm-hmm. Where in the beginning of the movie, he's just so fed up with his life as a goon, and by the end of that day, he has vowed to stop. He almost gets shot at. He thinks it's a will of God. And he even gets into the situation with the couple in the diner, and it's all assigned to him, and he's spouting out the biblical lines, and I love how he has a different interpretation of it at the end. That's a really cool scene. And then just by the end of it, he's just done with it. He wants to get out, and Vincent doesn't want to get out, and then he ends up dying because he left his Uzi and got shot by a guy who was making a Pop-Tart.
Took a shit.
He was taking a shit and just got shot. It's really kind of poetic because Vincent, he's also a level-headed guy, but he stayed in and he just died like nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pulp Fiction, also a good movie. I'd probably give this one a 3.5, maybe 4, but I think I like Reservoir Dogs more now, which I never thought I'd say. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's this week's Quentin Tarantino Hour. Tune in next week for, I think it would be Jackie Brown and Death Proof I haven't seen, so I guess those are that would be fresh. Two of them that I haven't seen. I have realized that his name is not Julius, it's Jules, so I don't know what the hell I was saying that whole time, but it's Jules. Gotta get that correction in there.